Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, and I'm doing a solo week 2 semi-finals recap. Just dropping this in live. There was no point waiting till this afternoon with no Sunday footy, sadly. So I know that means we're not going to have many people catching it live. But if you are tuning in, welcome. I hope you're having a good Sunday. Let us know what you made of the weekend. Share any thoughts for sure. And I'll just get through my solo take on the two games. Clarkey is away on holiday, so I hope he's having a fantastic time. Get a Campbell Gillard in the chat. I can happily report we had a perfect weekend. Well, I didn't back up my $12 same game multi, but we did win the best bets. Laid the short 3.5 with Sharks and Roosters, and they both won pretty comfortably. Cronulla made us pucker a little bit towards the end. Mixed matchup won very well as well. I think this mixed matchup won by over 30 points, incorporating the AFL, which was kind of a bonus winner there if you took the Lions. And Clarkey's collect struck again he picked Teddy for a try, and in fact, Teddy had a double in the emphatic Roosters win last night. But I'm going to begin with Friday night, Sharks Cowboys. So we're down to 4 teams. We can cast our eye to the prelims at the end of this show. I've got some footnotes about the AFL and even the Bledisloe, but let's start with the league. Okay, so Sharks 26 beat the Cowboys 18. Cronulla snaps a 7 finals game losing stretch. Cronulla needed this win badly and looked like they were going to get it very comfortably. It's 24-0 at halftime. And coming into this game, all the question marks were over Nico Hines. Can he deliver in the big moments? Can he deliver when his team needs the most? And funnily enough, it's the Braden Trindle show. And Trindle scores the first try. I don't know if everyone is aware of this. It's a penalty try. In past years, like a few years ago, a penalty try was just goes in the record books as a penalty try. And if you had that player, it doesn't count for a same game multi. I think you could even potentially bet on like first try, penalty try or whatever, but it's not a common occurrence. But I think it's logical that if you are the player that the opponent legally stops, that you get awarded that try. So Trindle gets the opening try. Did you guys think it was a penalty try? To me, Trindle was getting there first before Dearden, and he was probably getting there a bounce before Dearden. And the other part of it is if you don't award a penalty try to Cronulla right there, you are sending Dearden. Oh, sorry, it was Cotter. You are sending Cotter. Cotter's the one who tackled Trindle without the ball. You're sending Cotter to the sin bin. And it's going to be 2-0 Cronulla, and the next 10 minutes is going to be 13-12. So to me, a sin bin's worth about a try. And I actually heard Peyton say afterwards he would rather cop the try than cop the sin bin. So either way, it comes from the Sharks just keeping the ball alive on fifth tackle. That was the story of the first half. The first 3 Cronulla tries just all come on final play. This one was on the Cowboys try line, and it looks like Nico might get caught with the ball. He just throws it back. Sharky's keeping it alive. Trindle with the opportunistic kick in behind. Sharks get first blood. The next 2 Cronulla tries are just contested catches, winning a high ball in the Cowboys 10 or 20 zone, and being able to capitalise. So it was 18-0, and then I could even put the fourth Cowboys try down to fifth tackle because there's only a couple minutes to go in the half, and Sharks put up another bomb. The Cowboys opt to let it bounce. It goes in the in goal. Got to defend one more final set. Can't do it, and Mulatalo is scoring with 90 seconds to go in the half, which was kind of the back-breaking try. I didn't really think North Queensland was coming back from 18-0, but 24-0, it was game over, at least so I thought. I definitely thought, given how desperate the Sharks were, and given how well I know the Sharks can defend, and the Sharks won't give you anything easy, I thought the Cowboys wouldn't get close in the second half. But when you get a try out of Val Holmes first minute in the second half, you start to believe. Then I think it was the Cowboys nearly scoring again through a line break where Drinkwater took on Kennedy himself, and Kennedy gets the ankle tap. Like, that's just desperation stuff. If he's, a foot further behind, Drinky's going to beat him cold there, and it's going to be a 2-score game. Though shortly after that, the Cowboys did score, and I do think that one was also off a bomb. But overall, it's a bit of the story of the game was Sharks had better field position, and Sharks were better in the aerial contests. Cowboys make it 24-12, and I'm just starting to think like this would be one of the all-time horrendous losses for Cronulla, given the history, given that, one finals win since they won the comp, none since 2018, and you're winning a game 24-0, and you're starting to get nervous. And the more that the Cowboys could apply the pressure, the more that everyone's going to be looking at someone like Nico, and the pressure's going to be on you, and you're just going to get the wobbles. And the Cowboys were growing in energy, though it was another key play by Trindle forcing a set restart, and the Cowboys went out on the fall, which allowed the Sharks to extend the lead to 14 points. It still wasn't quite over. Val Holmes scores another try. Cowboys are within 8. Cowboys get another line break. It was Robson. I think he just couldn't get the ball free at the right time or didn't look over his right shoulder. Potentially the Cowboys are scoring there. And not only could that have meant a 2-point game with 6 or 7 minutes to go and all the momentum to North Queensland, but the cover could have been in massive jeopardy. You got no business losing a bet on a team minus 3.5 when you're up 24-0. But we got nervous. I mean, until the final whistle, it's an 8-point margin. So one more late try by North Queensland, it could have, if they kick it, and Val Holmes did get a bit of a nasty injury. Not that I know for sure what it was, because I heard mixed reports like could just be a cork, but hopefully nothing more severe than that. But I don't think Holmes could have taken the final kick. Anyway, it would have just summed up our season if North Queensland got the back door. But to me, Cronulla clearly deserved the win. And the other moments that I didn't mention, but are key as well, is that after halftime, yes, the Cowboys pull one try back, so it was 24-6. And then Cronulla thought they had extended the lead again. And twice Cronulla thought they were basically about to be up 30-6. And twice the bunker denied Sharks tries. One was finding a knock-on in another fifth tackle contest. And another was denying Sione Katoa in a put down, saying that his hand had come off the ball, which I thought was harsh because I just couldn't be certain if every finger had come off the ball and it was given a try. So it is funny how these games go. If Cronulla gets one of those early tries in the second half, Cronulla might win this game by 20 or 30 points, but just not being able to strike the knockout blow kept the Cowboys in it. But for North Queensland, let's talk about them. This is the last game we'll watch them play this year. This was the story of the Cowboys season. This team had top 4 ability. I was kind of thinking like who, if anybody, or out of these sides, who could beat Penrith? We all know Penrith will be a strong favourite next week in the prelim, and I'll cast an eye to those soon. But who would pose a bigger threat? And to me, I thought it was pretty similar. Whoever won, yes, the Sharks were favoured on Friday night, but North Queensland, you have to be at your very best to beat Penrith. And I think Cowboys at their best can be just as good as Cronulla at their best. The difference is Cronulla was a lot more consistent this year. That's why they were a top 4 team, and that's why North Queensland was actually just fighting to make the 8 in the end, though they finally did get 5th. But just couldn't figure out why North Queensland couldn't play consistently and play desperately and with discipline this season. And I keep going back to when the Cowboys made that prelim run in 2022, the identity was defense and toughness and strangling opponents out of games and being relentless. And this season, they just want to outscore the opponent and they want to be flashy. And it's awesome to have that ability and to get into that gear and to have some special players that can keep you in a game because you're always a threat to score points. And a couple of times this year, the Cowboys won shootouts or came from behind because they've got the talent to do that. But the best teams in the comp every year and the teams that realistically have the chance to lift the trophy always are extremely tough to breach defensively. And the Cowboys never really were. And if they ever defended well, it was only like one game here or there or one half here or there. And so the Cowboys had too much work to do. This game's a good example. Yes, you keep the Sharks tryless second half, but it's too little too late. It's one of the reasons why I took Cronulla in this game. So I just didn't have that trust factor about the Cowboys. I think they should have got beat last week and easily could have been beaten by Newcastle. And if you didn't learn a lesson from that about starting fast and just being switched on for an entire game, then now you've got a whole off season to think about that. As for Cronulla, Nico played second fiddle, but that's what I've spoken about, and Clarkey has as well, is that Nico's not necessarily a natural 7, and while he may wear 7 on his back, he's a run threat, and you'd rather him just kind of play what he sees and have a little bit less responsibility and leave a bit more organising to Trindle. And Trindle took most of the in-play kicking duties and a bit more of the final play decision-making as well. Often Nico took a run on fourth tackle, and I kind of thought, oh, now Nico can't get the ball on last, but Cronulla was perfectly fine putting that in Tricky Trindle's hands. People might criticise Nico, but he did slot every conversion as well, and he just played his role. And that's the best role that suits Cronulla for mine. It's really, yes, he wears 7, Trindle wears 6, but really it's almost the other way around. And as for Braden Trindle, something else I have definitely talked about in the past, because this guy was playing New South Wales Cup. I mean, Trindle is a gun player. He's 25. He's in his prime. He's just dominated a finals match. What about Trindle's second try? For a second, I thought that was Katoa scoring that. That was a winger's try, the way he wrapped around and got airborne and scored. But I was talking about this. If you go back 2 years ago, in fact, the year that Cronulla was top 4 and so were the Cowboys, and these two met in the first week of the finals, you got to remember who the halves were for Cronulla. They had signed Nico Hines, and his halves partner was Matty Moylan. And Braden Trindle couldn't get a game in this team. And I was saying Trindle might be the best backup half in the comp. And you just think about teams in the last 2 years that could have really used a handy half. And I describe Trindle as a half because I think he can be your 7 or your 6, and he can be a real compliment if you've got already one good half. Trindle could fit in so many teams. I mean, were the Dolphins ever interested in Trindle? I feel like the Dragons haven't had consistent halves. The Tigers have always been searching. Canberra at times. Canterbury, I mean, he's kind of under their nose. Imagine if Trindle had been the answer. Surely any of these clubs could have snapped him up because he was not playing first grade. Now, Trindle is one of the gun halves in the competition, basically, and is going to have to be on point again next week to give Cronulla a chance against Penrith. But there's some irony there that all eyes were on Nico this week, and it was the other man in the halves that was the difference. Let us know if you had any other thoughts out of that one. But, yeah, we got through it with a best bet win, so that was a good way to kick off the weekend. And then we actually had the AFL on before the Roosters Seagulls, and the Lions got the upset, which meant for the mixed matchup, the Roosters just had to avoid losing by 10. And that was never going to happen in this game, especially after the first 20 seconds. But it was Roosters 40 defeating the Seagulls 16 in the end. Now, another decent thing about the best bets, yes, I took the only 3.5 I could find on Cronulla on Tuesday. By game day, that's 4.5 everywhere. But the Roosters was 3.5 everywhere on Tuesday, and I played the 3.5, and by yesterday it was a 4.5 everywhere. So that's a key number that it gets through. It gives us some confidence that we're on the right side of the line in both games. And I don't think that was just because Radley came into the team, because that was really a last-minute announcement. I don't think we knew till game day that Radley was going to return, but he played a part in this one. In fact, grabbing the opening try. And Radley's even more important to this team now that Brandon Smith is out, because although Radley had been utilised a bit on an edge, and I never felt he was as elite or as impactful, the Roosters had other options in the middle of the field. But now that Connor Watson is forced to play hooker, and that Tupanua, though he had a couple of bad errors last night, Tupanua has really established himself and really holds his own and is a gun second rower in his own right. Now you bring Radley back in as that link in the middle of the field, and it does add an extra dimension to the Roosters. And I don't really think I've been wrong about this team. I know I've been hearing it a lot, people telling me, oh, you love the Roosters. And I did back them last week. And, we've seen it. Even on Friday night, a team was down 24-0 and came back and nearly won and got it within 12. The Roosters were down 22-0. Maybe they would have got it a bit closer if one or two things went their way last week. Penrith's a very tough proposition, and that's another part of taking the Roosters and Sharks this weekend. They just got a nice step down in grade, because all respect to North Queensland and Manly, they're no Melbourne and Penrith, and we're going to see that next week. But what I get back to is, like, throughout this year, I've spoken about the Roosters as if they are as good as Penrith and Melbourne. And I don't think many other people agreed with me. And now we may never know, because of those injuries in round 26 and how great of a season Walker was having, and then having to reshuffle your team. I talk about Brandon Smith might not have the best year, but you take Watson out of the role he was playing. It hasn't given the Roosters a chance to be at full strength against Penrith and Melbourne, who are. But if you look at the premiership odds, just before those injuries to the Roosters were as short of favourites as Melbourne and Penrith. So to me, that's some sort of indication that the bookmakers felt that the Roosters were on that level. And that's all I was ever saying, is that going into a lot of these games, the Roosters weren't necessarily priced as an elite team, and I viewed them that way, and it didn't always work out, and it didn't last week. But last night, you kind of saw. I know that anyone that backed Manly is going to feel very hard done by because of what happened in the first minute. So maybe we should talk about kickoffs. I'm a big fan of the NFL, and they've made a pretty radical rule change in the NFL this year for the first ever season. They have quite dramatically changed the kickoff, where everyone on the kicking team is already in the opponent half standing still. Everyone on the receiving team is all on a certain line standing still, apart from one or two players behind, like in a fullback position, that will actually catch the ball and return, meaning that basically all the collisions are lower force, lower velocity, because everyone's essentially getting a standing start. And why they do this? Because of safety, because of the stats had showed them that there was a disproportionate amount of injuries coming off kickoffs, because that's the time where you get a lot of bodies charging from opposite directions with big run-ups and colliding, and therefore you can lose control, and not to mention there's more momentum in those tackles. So it's not probably as exciting or visually pleasing, but it was done for safety. And we love the kickoff, and it's an amazing moment of the game. And the opening exchanges, you really see which forward pack wants to assert their dominance. But you guys know how it goes with liability, with more knowledge, information, and it's mostly around concussions. And just with the incidents, how many times has it happened? I can remember it in an opening hit up of an Origin, but it's happened 2 or 3 times earlier this year where a player's been knocked out. Moses Sully it happened to. Was it Patolo, one of the doggies props in like round 2? Like, players getting knocked out on the first hit up of the game. It's way more. It may not happen frequently, but it's a way higher percentage than just in general play. And we had Kola knocked out first player this game, and then bizarrely Jake Trbojevic copped a bad knock to the head, although he was able to come back on after the HIA on the very second tackle. But that kind of threw the Seagulls into disarray early. You're looking for players that can be difference makers, and Cola's had one of the all-time moments in a finals game last week and can be that type of player for Manly, and he's gone. Like, he's wiped out 5 seconds into a game. You're sort of fortunate that you do have Ben Trbojevic, who's got that utility value, may have been planned to play edge, but has played centre before. So you're kind of lucky to bring Burbo on, but it still mucks up your rotations. And then when your co-captain is knocked out next play, and it's not for me to judge. This is me not knowing anything, just purely opinion. But Jake Trbojevic shouldn't have come back on. You see the hit that he took. He got smashed in the head. The independent doctor easily could have called that category 1. I don't know how they justify that it wasn't. As soon as it was called category 2, we all know what kind of bloke Jake Trbojevic is. He's going to say anything. You could see him. He was stumbling and saying, I'm right. Like, Jake Trbojevic will die for that team. So when it goes to category 2, then it's just going to be a questionnaire or whatever, and he's going to say I'm right, and he's going to do everything possible to answer the questions. And Manly would have been totally screwed without Gerbo, but I don't even think he was quite the same player when he came back on and was caught napping for the third try to the Seagulls, which was a pretty decisive try because that already put Manly up 20-0. So we had a couple of games this weekend that the home side really got out of the blocks. And the other guy that just had a whale of a game, we're all too used to seeing it, is the man that Clarkey called out, playing his 250th, and the captain of the Roosters, Tedesco, had a try in each half, but 3 line break assists as well, 240-odd meters. He was unreal. And I'm looking at Manly. Cola's out. This is the other thing. Really early in the game, the commentators go, oh, look at Turbo. He's clearly moving so much better than last week. You could already tell he's moving so freely. And I'm like, am I watching the same game as you? Like, Turbo, he's gutting it out. He has a sore knee. He's got a bum shoulder. He's taken some painkilling injections, so it's not hampering him as much. But he can't do everything he wants to do. Like, name me one moment last night where Turbo had a really impactful play. I'm not saying he's not tough. I'm not saying he doesn't put his hand up. I'm not saying he doesn't get himself into positions, but he couldn't do what he's capable of doing. Turbo could never just break the line, break a tackle. I don't like. Maybe at one point there was a kick in behind and Turbo took a good line towards the ball and beat the first kick chaser and got out of the in goal. But realistically, like, did Turbo bust tackles? At this time of year, your best players, you're looking to them to do more than they have all season long. Turbo couldn't do it. So Turbo wasn't really a threat for the Roosters. He's just playing absolutely busted. And I could still see him running awkwardly, favouring the shoulder, and not able to impact the game the way he usually can. So as the Roosters just built a lead, I'm just thinking, how is Manly going to get themselves out of this? And I was thinking the same a week ago against Canterbury, and I'm still not sure how Manly did do that. But as we know, a couple of special tries. But it's just so hard for Manly because I'm just looking at who's going to break this game open. Again, there's always eyes on DCE, but he needs to play off the back of others. And the other guy who actually was outstanding is Olakau'atu. But the Roosters could really focus on Olakau'atu. And I feel like Olakau'atu is so good that still had some moments where he can beat tacklers even when there's 2 or 3 that have got their eyes on him. But you just need to strike across the park to win these big games against good defenses. And the Roosters had more of that. Good game by Sand and Smith as well, getting that opportunity in the halves. The team's backed him. Swali, as you can see on the screen, nails every conversion. Or maybe, oh no, yeah, I don't think Swali took the last one because he'd copped a cork. I think Sand and Smith had that shot at the end. So Swali nails every kick, and of course that just triggers me because I go back to round 27. We lose the best bet because Swali misses twice from out wide on the left touchline. And then this game he nails 2 in a row from the left touchline, and the commentator's like, oh, he's so good kicking from this side. But anyway, the Roosters just reminding everyone what level they can play at. Again, Radley back in this team definitely elevates them. And Manly, at some point, we're going to run out of juice. Threw everything into that win over Canterbury. Sometimes that can fuel you, and you can get through another week on inspiration. And we could all see the potential for Manly to just be that sort of team of destiny, that spirited team. And you don't want to write off DCE, the ability to take be clinical in a key moment. You're starting to see some of these outside backs emerge, like Kola, Hopewadi. It's been an exciting year for Manly, and you also always have to be wary of Turbo. Part of my bet on the Roosters this week was because I was very doubtful that Turbo can be near the same player that Manly needs him to be. But you had that respect for him. So there was a roadmap for Manly to make this an interesting game, but straight away you're on the back foot with those HIAs. The Roosters are just switched on. As Adam says, Turbo, big, played one of his best games. And Adam also commenting there about the whistle. Like, I go back to Cronulla and North Queensland. There was not a single 6 again in in the first 30, 35 minutes, I want to say. I can't remember if there was one in the half. So the referees, and that was Klein, definitely wanting to have less impact on the game. But that changes the way the game's played. And for the Cowboys, that was a bad thing. The fact that that game had no 6 agains meant it was going to be harder to mount a comeback because it was going to be harder for any team to build momentum because it wasn't that sort of free-flowing game where teams could get a lot of tackles in a row. And this game was similar. The Roosters got more penalties and more 6 agains, but I also feel the Roosters earned that. Warrior Hargraves was back. The forward pack was more physical. Manly hurt themselves as well with errors, a few errors coming out of their own end. We're just always under pressure, and most of the game was played in the Roosters attacking half. So it's a decent season by Manly, and it's unfortunate that people probably don't realise how injured Turbo was, and Manly can't make a grand final. Because Turbo hasn't played in a grand final, right? Manly hasn't been in a grand final since 2013 and hasn't won a comp since 2011. But Manly can't get back to a grand final unless Turbo is at his absolute peak and doing things like Kalen Ponga was, like the best players in the competition can. Edwards is kind of in that type of form this season. Prime Teddy. Like Turbo needs to be that, and then other players need to be clicking around him and taking advantage of the openings that Turbo gives you because Turbo's terrifying the defense. And if Turbo's not capable of that, Manly's just not an elite team, not a top 4 team. The Roosters are, so the Roosters got the comprehensive win. Yeah, Adam says the only player had some shockers was Satili. Tupanua had a couple of bad drops, and I think they possibly both led to Seagul's tries as well. And so maybe just kept the door ajar. But you can afford those mistakes in a game like this. It's just a combination of factors that Manly ran out of juice. The Roosters had a point to prove after being beat by 20 last week. And the game just went the Roosters' way. Get a try for Bomb late as well. I talked about the aerial advantage for the Roosters this week as well. Is there any other major talking points I missed out of those ones, guys? If I go back to Cronulla, they now play Penrith. This was what we predicted most likely would happen. The top 4 swap opponents. We know what happened in week 1 of the finals. So will it be any different next week for the prelims? Cronulla plays arrested Penrith. The line for that game is 11.5, I believe. Then the Roosters go down to Melbourne. I am really looking forward to that one. The rivalry continues, and the line is a little shorter. The line is 9.5 with the Roosters go down to Melbourne. And that's one thing I'm going to have to reserve my judgment on. With only 2 games to tackle and 2 weeks in a row, the opening lines have moved the way that I sort of expected. Like when the lines opened last week, Cronulla was a 3.5-point favourite everywhere against the Cowboys. And I was hoping it stayed there by Tuesday, and luckily just one bookie still had it on Tuesday. So it might sound crazy for me to think that saying who I like on a Sunday is going to affect the market on Tuesday, but call me superstitious, right? But again, we played the Roosters as the best bet on Tuesday, and it did move a full point on every bookie after that. So I'm not going to say sorry today, guys, but I will get in the lab. It's not just about me holding back information. There's no reason for me to do that. I love the audience that we've got, and I want to share everything I have with you guys, but I do feel like I hate to give an opinion that's incomplete, because what if I change my mind? Then I don't want to lead anybody astray either. So I prefer to do my full preparation and then tell you how I see it on Tuesday. Getting back to the mixed matchup, just some footnotes. You may not care anymore, but less footy on. Watched a bit of NRLW as always, but I found myself watching rugby union. Did anyone else watch the Bledisloe Saturday Arvo? It was interesting because the Wallabies have just been to Argentina and led a game 20-3 and then lost 67-27, beaten something like 50-0 in the second half. So it was a dark day in Aussie rugby, and now you're coming back home, but you're playing the All Blacks. The line was 16.5 points, and that's the Wallabies at home. So it looked like it could be a tough afternoon, but I'll flick it on. I thought I'll have a look. And in that first half, the All Blacks are up 28-7. And All Blacks had a couple other tries disallowed as well. But the final score was 31-28. Wallabies actually came home and kept fighting, and the All Blacks got a couple of sin bins in the second half, and the Wallabies had half a shot at the end. So it was a decent game to watch second half, to be fair. I was kind of making fun of the Wallabies, saying, I don't think Swahili is going to help you make up 40 points on Argentina. But a week later, well, 2 weeks later, I should say, I think there was a break in the Rugby Championship. But there you go. New Zealand just has beaten Australia every which way for like 25 straight years, basically, apart from the odd game, but never 2 or 3 in a row or never losing to Australia the majority in the Bledisloe. As we know, I think Australia hasn't won it since 2001. But that's close. There's something, maybe a little moral victory. And then I, of course, watched the AFL. And I don't get a lot of time to watch much AFL, but on a weekend like this and prelim games, they are massive. And you have to give some credit to the AFL, I feel like. 18,000 people came out and watched Sharks Cowboys at Allianz Friday night. 40,000 were at the SCG the same night to watch Swans Port. And then yesterday, Allianz was sold out for Roosters Seagulls, which is awesome because games are just always more exciting in front of a massive crowd. But meanwhile, at the MCG, they had 93,000 people watching Lions Cats. And I gave you that bonus tip for what it's worth, that I liked the Lions in that game, and I built that into the mixed matchup. And it was an enthralling game. If you're a casual, surely you had to love that. But the Lions, who lost in the first week were outside the top 4, I should say, so have had to play each week, coming up against a rested Geelong, were down 25 points in the third quarter. And for the mixed matchup, I had Roosters better result than Geelong. And ironically, Roosters won by 24. And the Lions were down 25. But the Lions come all the way back. The Lions are up a couple goals in the fourth quarter. Then the Cats get in front by a point with 2 minutes to go. Before the Lions actually kick a couple of goals. It's amazing to kick a goal with 90 seconds to go in a prelim, to sort of get in front and potentially win. But then icing on the cake was the Lions got another one, and then the Cats missed from in front and gave us a big hand in the mixed matchup because we became like $1.10 favorite going into that one. But if you watched it, you're with me. That was an insane game. That was pretty spectacular. And then I love the fact that these codes, I wouldn't say they're coordinated, but they're all smart enough to know that we just want our footy fix. So the rugby didn't try and put their game up against the league on Saturday night. The AFL put their game in the twilight spot, which I reckon is an awesome spot for watching footy and also attending footy. Maybe it's just because I'm old. I'd rather go to a game at 5 rather than one that kicks off at 8. But then we got the nightcap, which was the league, which was actually the least close game of the 3. But you guys kind of know me. I love every sport, none more than rugby league, but it was a pretty good afternoon leading up to that. And glad to get a very comprehensive win in the mixed matchup, get back a winning record for the finals. And it's sad, of course, that we've only got a couple to go, but I'm sure we'll get some more exciting moments next weekend. It looks cut and dry with the Storm and Panthers being so dominant this season, but there's a reason why we play the game. So we'll see. But again, I'm not revealing which way I'm leaning on either of those contests yet, though you are welcome to let me know in the comments what you make of these. Thanks to the few people that did tune in with me live, especially as this was an unannounced show. I just thought putting it up early gives people any opportunity to catch it throughout the day today. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in a couple of days' time. I think we're getting Benny Howard back on, the man who's 90% the pod group on his rugby league best bets. Clarkey's still away. So you're going to get Benny Howard coming in, breaking down the games with me. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And we'll catch you then.